prends pour d'autres ou quoi?
Et la jeune fille, c'est toi. C'est toi.
Mais t'es bien plaisanter avec le sang.
Wherever we live.
Pas une perruque, c'est mes cheveux.
Huh? La lumière. Don't you want to...
So you want to cut me up?
Freedom! His assassin. All of that for me.
Yes, and more than that.
Last Tango in Paris, 1972, directed by Bernardo Bertolucci, is a provocative and daring film that explores the emotional and psychological complexities of a relationship formed under unconventional circumstances. The film stars Marlon Brando as Paul, a grieving American expatriate, and Maria Schneider as Jeanne, a young Parisian woman. Known for its controversial portrayal of sexuality and the intricacies of human emotions, the film captivated audiences and provoked debates upon its release. The story begins with Paul, an older middle-aged man, who is clearly struggling with the recent death of his wife. He has relocated to Paris, seeking distance from his past and trying to numb his overwhelming grief. The opening scenes showcase Paul in a state of emotional and physical disarray. He walks the streets of Paris in a dazed, disconnected manner, clearly haunted by memories of his wife. His pain is palpable, and as a result, he becomes detached from everything around him. His journey is one of self-destruction, as he seeks out anything that could offer a temporary escape from his anguish. It is in this state of emotional turmoil that Paul encounters Jeanne, a young woman who is also experiencing turmoil in her life, though her struggles are not as deeply tragic as Paul's. Jeanne is a woman on the brink of adulthood, trying to navigate her personal desires and ambitions in a city that embodies freedom and complexity. She is engaged to be married, but she is also questioning her place in the world and struggling with her own identity. Unlike Paul, Jeanne is not grieving, but she is looking for something more in her life. This becomes evident when Paul and Jeanne meet in an apartment building while both are checking out the same property for different reasons. At this point, the film doesn't set up their encounter as a typical romantic one. Instead, their meeting is completely incidental, almost like two strangers who happen to be passing by each other. There's no immediate attraction, no intense chemistry in the traditional sense. The connection between them grows organically, driven by their mutual emotional dissatisfaction. As Paul attempts to find solace in an unfamiliar city, he proposes a seemingly simple arrangement to Jeanne. They should engage in an anonymous sexual relationship, completely detached from any emotional or social expectations. There would be no names exchanged, no questions asked, and, most importantly, no emotional connections made. The relationship would be purely physical, devoid of any strings. For Paul, this arrangement serves as an escape from the pain of losing his wife. He is searching for something, anything, that could make him feel alive again. The anonymity and lack of emotional commitment offer him a temporary respite from his emotional devastation. For Jeanne, on the other hand, the encounter is more complex. While she does not initially reject Paul's proposal, she is unsure of what this arrangement means for her emotionally. She is not fully aware of the weight of the encounter or the consequences it will bring to her own sense of self. However, like Paul, Jeanne seeks a way to experience life outside the boundaries of her current circumstances, and thus she agrees to the arrangement. Their relationship begins in an impersonal, almost clinical manner. They meet at a rented apartment which is devoid of warmth and character, its sterile, bare walls reflecting the emotional distance both characters are trying to maintain. The apartment becomes a metaphor for their emotional state, disconnected, isolated, and detached from the world around them. It is in this space that Paul and Jeanne engage in anonymous, often aggressive sexual encounters. The lack of names and faces allows them to momentarily forget who they are and what they are running from. Yet, despite their attempts to remain emotionally distant, there are moments when their vulnerability surfaces, revealing the pain and loneliness they each carry. Throughout their encounters, Paul exhibits a great deal of emotional intensity. His grief over his wife's death emerges in his interactions with Jeanne. His behavior becomes erratic, often shifting between tenderness and aggression. At times, he is gentle and desperate, trying to recreate the intimacy he lost, while at other moments he is harsh and controlling, unable to fully process his emotions in a healthy way. He uses Jeanne as a substitute for his lost love, but his unresolved grief clouds his perception of their relationship. He demands more from her than she is prepared to give, pushing her into uncomfortable situations where she is both physically present and emotionally absent. It is clear that Paul is looking for more than just sex. He is looking for someone to help him escape the crushing weight of his emotions. Jean, on the other hand, finds herself caught in a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. She initially agrees to the anonymous arrangement, believing it will offer her a temporary escape from her own life. However, as the encounters continue, she becomes increasingly conflicted. She finds herself drawn to Paul, but not in a way that is purely physical. There is a deep unease in her interactions with him. Her discomfort grows as she tries to separate herself from the emotional complexities that begin to emerge. She is uncertain whether she is being used or whether she is willingly complicit in the arrangement. The power dynamics in their relationship shift constantly, and Jean finds herself questioning whether she can continue participating in a relationship that seems so emotionally draining and detached from reality. One of the most powerful aspects of the film is its depiction of the emotional and psychological toll of their relationship. While the physical encounters are explicit, the true tension lies in the way the characters' emotional states clash. The film never shies away from portraying their vulnerability and the complexities that arise from trying to separate physical intimacy from emotional connection. The rawness of their relationship is uncomfortable to watch at times, as both characters try to navigate their own inner turmoil while simultaneously attempting to control their feelings for each other. The cinematography in Last Tango in Paris plays a crucial role in conveying the emotional isolation of the characters. The camera lingers on their faces, capturing the subtle shifts in their expressions that reveal their inner struggles. There are many long, lingering shots that emphasize the stillness of the apartment and the emptiness that surrounds them. These visuals create a sense of suffocating intimacy, where the characters are physically close but emotionally distant. The tension between their desires and fears builds throughout the film, setting the stage for the inevitable unraveling of their relationship. As Paul and Jean's relationship deepens, the emotional complexity becomes undeniable. What started as a simple arrangement without expectations soon becomes something far more intense and difficult to navigate. While Paul's emotional pain continues to drive him, Jean begins to experience the consequences of their encounters in a way that Paul cannot yet understand. The apartment they share becomes a place of emotional conflict, where the walls are not just a physical barrier, but a metaphorical one that keeps them trapped in their own unresolved emotions. As the relationship between Paul and Jean evolves, the emotional and psychological complexity of their encounters deepens. What began as a detached, anonymous affair quickly turns into a profound and painful exploration of human vulnerability. The rawness of their connection reaches new heights, with both characters unable to escape the powerful forces of grief, desire, and emotional confusion that bind them. Paul's struggle to deal with his wife's death continues to manifest in his interactions with Jean. His initial approach to their relationship was driven by a need to escape from his overwhelming grief and numb himself from the pain of his loss. However, as the affair progresses, it becomes clear that Paul is using Jean not just as a physical outlet, but as a way to confront his emotional pain. He demands more from her, pushing her to engage in sexual acts that feel increasingly degrading and invasive. The power dynamics between them shift, with Paul assuming a dominant role and Jean becoming more submissive, though never fully accepting her role in this arrangement. At times, Paul's behavior becomes erratic, as his grief intertwines with his desire to control the situation. His emotional volatility is mirrored in his sexual encounters with Jean, where moments of tenderness are followed by harshness. This erratic behavior serves as a coping mechanism for Paul as he grapples with the unbearable weight of his emotions. In his mind, the more he possesses Jean, the closer he can get to the intimacy he once had with his late wife. But this is a delusion. His need for control and his inability to process his grief in a healthy way ultimately complicate their relationship and contribute to its unraveling. Jean, for her part, becomes increasingly aware of the powerlessness she feels in the relationship. While she initially thought she could separate herself from any emotional attachment, she finds it more difficult as the affair continues. Jeanne begins to feel the emotional toll that Paul's actions are having on her, and the more she tries to escape, the more she becomes entangled in the web of pain and desire that Paul has created. She is caught between her own desires and her growing discomfort with Paul's controlling behavior. The psychological strain on Jean begins to take a toll on her mental health. She begins to question her own desires, as well as her place in this complicated dynamic. She is not merely a passive participant in their sexual encounters. She is an emotional person trying to navigate a situation that is becoming increasingly harmful. Jeanne's internal struggle becomes one of the most compelling aspects of the film, as she balances her own need for emotional connection with the realization that she is being used in a way that goes against her sense of self-worth. Paul's emotional detachment, though, never fully allows him to connect with Jean on a deeper level. His refusal to acknowledge his feelings or talk about his late wife with Jean further isolates him from the potential for a more genuine emotional bond. As the relationship moves forward, the tension between them grows, as their mutual need for intimacy is tainted by unresolved issues. The film begins to shift from an exploration of physical intimacy to a more intense psychological battle, where both characters are fighting their own inner demons while simultaneously hurting one another. The film's turning point comes when Jean becomes involved with another man, a former lover, and Paul is forced to confront the reality that their anonymous, detached relationship cannot continue in the way he envisioned. Jean's brief affair with her ex-lover serves as a catalyst for Paul's breakdown, as he begins to realize that he cannot control her, nor can he fully control his own emotions. This marks the beginning of Paul's emotional collapse, as the fragile facade of their relationship begins to crack under the weight of his own unresolved grief and jealousy. As Paul spirals further into emotional chaos, Jean's decision to distance herself from him becomes more pronounced. The relationship that once seemed like a temporary escape now feels like an unbearable burden. In the film's final moments, Paul's emotional collapse reaches its peak. He is no longer the confident, detached man he once was. His grief and anger have consumed him to the point where he is unrecognizable. His breakdown is a tragic culmination of the emotional and psychological unraveling that began with his wife's death. Jean's departure from the relationship symbolizes the ultimate consequence of Paul's inability to confront his emotions and heal from his loss. Last Tango in Paris ends on a note of painful ambiguity. The characters are left with little resolution, their emotional struggles unresolved. Paul's journey ends in emotional ruin, while John's future remains uncertain. The film does not provide any neat closure. Instead, it leaves viewers to grapple with the complex, uncomfortable nature of human relationships, grief, and intimacy. The emotional devastation that both characters experience is a powerful reminder of how deeply personal trauma can affect one's ability to form healthy, meaningful connections with others.